fighting for Rome near the border of Switzerland and northern Italy. Maurice is the commanding officer of Egyptian Christian soldiers known as the Theban Legion. Summoned from Egypt by Emperor Maximian, the Theban Legion marches to meet their foes, the Holy Lance at their standard. Maximian then issues a terrible order. The Christian Thebans must offer sacrifices to the emperor and the other Roman gods.
The Roman emperor was the head of state, the head of the empire, but also a religious figure. For a Christian to pay homage to such a figure then would have been an act of renouncing one's religion.
The Roman Empire at this time is undergoing a concerted effort to persecute Christianity.
Emboldened or perhaps inspired by the spear of Christ, Maurice and his men refuse Maximian's order, proclaiming that despite their loyalty to Rome, they are Christians first. Emperor Maximian is outraged. He orders the decimation of Maurice's army, the execution of every 10th man. The countryside soon flows with the blood of the Theban Legion, all going willingly to their deaths.
Maurice, as the leader, was reminding the Christian men of their duty to be true to their faith, and in fact to consider that those who had their names taken out were the lucky ones because of their martyrdom.
With the spear of Christ by his side, Maurice continues to disobey the orders from Rome. Maximian decimates the Theban Legion 2 more times, after which Maurice declares their adherence to the faith in a simple message.
Maximian, we are your soldiers, but we are even more the soldiers of Christ. We cannot do what...
Shalom, 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 shalom. We're going to start in Book of Acts, chapter 10, verse 1. There was a certain man in Caesarea called Cornelius, a centurion of the band called the Italian Band. I want to give all the praises and the glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahushai, Bahasham, Rakah, Kodash. Yahweh is the name of the Most High God. Yahushai is the name of the Son, who the world ignorantly calls Jesus Christ. As always, double honors to the apostles and to the elders of Great Millstone, our teachers. Shalom to the 144,000 and the hopeful elect of the brothers and sisters of the true children of Israel, the true Hebrew Israelites, the remnant. The Bible speaks about them and refers to them as the chosen. Many are called, few are chosen. So praises and glory to Yahweh B'Shem Yahushai. So, as you can see, Cornelius was a centurion in the Roman army. A centurion meaning that he was the leader of 100. He was a Roman officer in the Roman Empire, referred to as a centurion, because he had 100 men under his command at all times. Cornelius was an Israelite who would have been looked upon by the actual Jews, the Israelites who knew they were Jews and did not want to associate themselves with the Romans or the Greeks, but in this case the Romans. They would have looked on Cornelius as being a Gentile because he had joined the Roman legion. He'd become part of the Roman army. He was an officer in the Roman, but Cornelius was a devout man, as we're going to see from scripture. He was a devout man, meaning that Cornelius would have been following the high holy days, Passover, the Feast of Tabernacles, the Feast of First Fruits, the main, the Pentecost, the 3 main holy days to go up to Jerusalem to partake in. He also probably would have been keeping the Sabbath as well. Maybe not always, because he was in the Roman army. He was an officer in the Roman army, but he was an Israelite. He was a devout man. He believed in Yahweh and he believed in Yahushua. And as you can see from these historians are showing you, there were many people of color as part of the Roman army. The Romans would, when they subjugate a nation and made them pay tribute to the Roman Empire, which is taxes, they would also allow them to enlist in the Roman army, to pledge their allegiance to the Caesar, to the emperor, to the Caesar, to the Roman Empire. And they would allow them to join. So Cornelius was one of those Israelites who joined the Roman army. Now, unlike Tiberius Julius Alexander, who also was an Israelite, as I'm going to show you, was an Israelite who joined the Roman army, but Julius Alexander was not a devout man. He was not a devout man. He didn't follow the high holy days. He didn't keep the Sabbath. He didn't believe in his ancestral right as being an Israelite. He was fully converted to a Roman. So he was in a complete Gentile state of mind. Tiberius Julius Alexander. Now, Tiberius Julius Alexander, he was a Roman governor. He was a general in the Roman army, and I'm going to show you that he took part in the siege of Jerusalem. All right, Tiberius Julius Alexander, but he came from a wealthy Israelite family. But he no longer wanted to be considered an Israelite. He wanted to be considered a Roman. He didn't take part in the laws and commandments and the statutes. He didn't take part in the high holy days. He didn't take part in the Sabbath. He didn't want nothing to do with his ancestral heritage, his ancestral right of being an Israelite. He wanted to be a Roman. And he went up to the highest, probably short of being the Caesar and emperor, he got to the highest level within the Roman Empire under the Edomite emperors. And he was a general in the army during the time of Titus, when Titus was a general himself, during the time of the Flavian dynasty, during the time of Claudius, going all the way back to Claudius, Emperor Claudius. All right, and I'm going to show you. But he was not a devout man. So these were two Israelites that were Roman officers in the Roman Empire. One was a devout man, which was Cornelius, while the other one, Tiberius Julius Alexander, was not a devout man, which I'm going to show you. So let me switch screens so you can see. Don't want to do it earlier. I told you I did this video earlier today, but I didn't have the screen up, so I'm having to redo it again. All right, which is good. I'm happy to do it again. I'm 100% happy to do it again. All right. I was annoyed with myself, and I did it earlier, and I didn't put the screen up for you to see what I was showing you. So what I did, I deleted that video, and I'm doing it again so you can see the information that I'm speaking on. All right, regarding Cornelius the Centurion and regarding Tiberius Julius Alexander, the Roman general. All right. So as you can see here, Acts chapter 10, verse 1. It says, there was a certain man in Caesarea called Cornelius, a centurion of the band called the Italian band. All right. A devout man. So he was a devout man. This was not an Edomite. Cornelius was not an Edomite. He was a Hebrew Israelite who had enlisted within the Roman army and rose up to become a centurion, an officer, a Roman officer over 100 men. But he was a devout man. So if we look up, there was a certain man in Caesarea called Cornelius, a centurion. Now, Cornelius's name, if we look at Cornelius's name as well, this means of a horn, all right? A Roman centurion of the Italian cohort stationed in Caesarea, and they say who converted to Christianity. He didn't convert to Christianity. Cornelius was an Israelite from the beginning, right? His bloodline went back to probably one of the three major tribes that was left back in Jerusalem, Judah, Benjamin, or Levi. He was an Israelite by birth, Cornelius. He was a devout man. He didn't convert to become an Israelite, Christian, because you can't convert to become an Israelite, as we all know, all right? So he was a devout man, a leader of a centurion, band of the Italian band. He was a what? He was a centurion. Where was it? Here, centurion. So quick look at the centurion, what it says here in the Greek.
Strong's G 1543. Hekatantarches.
Hekatantartes. Right? He was an officer in the Roman army. That's what he was, Cornelius, an officer in the Roman army. All right? So Tiberius was also an officer in the Roman army, but he was higher up. Tiberius Julius Alexander was also an Israelite, just like Cornelius, but he was of a higher rank. Tiberius Julius Alexander was an equestrian, I can never pronounce that word, an equestrian governor and a general in the Roman Empire. I can never pronounce that word, you know. Let me just see, hold on. Yeah. And a general, he was a governor, and a general in the Roman Empire. Born into what? A wealthy Jewish family, it should say Israelite family. Of where? Of Alexandria, right? So, but abandoning and neglecting, there you go, the Israelite religion. So he was not a devout man. So Tiberius Julius was not a devout man, but Cornelius was. So his family came from where? Alexandria. Where is Alexandria? In Egypt. Why? Because Alexandria was a province where the Israelites lived, where probably about 1/3 of the city was made up of Israelites in Alexandria. Now, Alexandria is the second largest city in Egypt and the largest city in the Mediterranean, as you can see here. Right? It lies at the western edge of the Nile River Delta, founded in 331 BC by Alexander the Great. Right? Alexandria grew rapidly and became a major center of Hellenic civilization, eventually replacing Memphis as the capital, right, of Egypt. Right? So, Alexandria city that was created and set up by Alexander the Great. After Alexander the Great died, his 4 generals took control of his empire. Ptolemy took control of Egypt. The Ptolemies were the ones that Hellenized the majority of the people that was in Egypt, hence why the Israelites became Hellenistic, right? Between the Ptolemies and the Seleucid Empire, they was always fighting over Israel, and they both were pushing the Hellenistic and the Hellenized society upon the nations that they ruled over. So Israel, they was trying to Hellenize the Israelites. This is where you get the wars to do with the Maccabees, right? And in terms of Antiochus and the Maccabee brothers, okay? So Alexandria was the place. So Alexandria's the same place in Egypt, probably where Yahushua ran to. So you think of when the Lord said to, when the Most High, when the angel came, Gabriel came to, when the angel came to Joseph, Matthew was a publican, wasn't he? No, Matthew chapter 2. When the angel Gabriel came to Joseph and Mary and told them to flee into, there you go, the flight to Egypt. So, Matthew 2:13. And when they were departed, behold, the angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream, saying, Arise and take the young child and his mother and flee into Egypt, and be thou there until I bring thee word. For Herod will seek the young child to destroy him. Right? So when he arose, he took the young child and his mother by night and departed into Egypt, and was there until the death of Herod, which is Herod the Great, that he might be fulfilled, which was spoken by the Lord by the prophet, saying, Out of Egypt have I called my son. So where was this prophesied, right? We're going to go back to Cornelius, don't worry. So where was this prophesied? I believe it's in the book of Hosea. Hosea chapter 11. Yeah, here it is, the first verse. Hosea chapter 11, verse 1. When Israel was a child, then I loved him and called my son out of Egypt. Who is the Most High's son? Yahushai, who the world ignorantly calls Jesus Christ. So this is a prophecy about Yahushai fleeing into Egypt with his parents, Joseph and Mary, and coming out of Egypt as a young man, right? When he calls them out of Egypt. Why did they go to Egypt? Because of two reasons. One, the Egyptians are a nation of so-called black people. Two, because there's a large community of Israelites that lived in the capital of Egypt, which was Alexandria. So Yahushua more likely fled to Alexandria to live amongst the Israelites, because I believe 1/3 of Alexandria was made up of Israelites, right? So if we go to, so this is a prophecy of the Lord calling, the Most High calling his son out of Egypt. It was prophesied, the prophet Hosea prophesied this, all right? If we go back to Matthew 2, I believe this is Herod the Great, all right? Let me just quickly check. Herod, I believe that's Herod the Great, the death of Herod. Let's just check. Herod, the name of a royal family that flourished amongst the Jews in the times of Yahushua, all right? And the apostles. Yeah, Herod the Great was the son of Antipater the Idumea, to understand that Herod was an Edomite. His father Antipater was an Edomite. The word Idumea is the Greek word for Edom. They were Edomites, and they married into the Hasmonean family. They married into the family of the Maccabees. Jonathan Hyrcanus, I believe it was his granddaughter. Miriam was his granddaughter, I believe, who Herod married, right? It says they appointed king of Judah in 40 BC by the Roman Senate at the suggestion of Antony, right? That's Mark Antony, and with the consent of Octavian, right? That's Augustus Octavian. He was the adopted son of Julius Caesar, right? Augustus Octavian. It says he at length, and he was alongside Mark Antony, they were part of the second triumvirate. You had the first triumvirate, which was Julius Caesar, Pompey, and what's his name? Crassus, Marcus Crassus, I believe his name was. Crassus, Marcus Antonio Crassus, and Pompey and Julius. That was the first triumvirate. And the second triumvirate was Mark Antony, Augustus Octavia, and I think the third guy was Lepidus. They called it the second triumvirate, and then Octavia eventually became the emperor. All right, but that's for another day. But I just thought I'd just let you know. It says he at length overcame the great opposition, which is the country which made him took possession of the kingdom 37 BC after the Battle of Actium. He was confirmed by Octavia, whose favor he ever enjoyed. He was brave and skilled in war, learned and sagacious, but also extremely suspicious and cruel. Hence, he destroyed the entire royal family of the Hasmoneans, right? Put to death many of the Jews, right? So the Hasmonean family is what they married into. This is to give them legitimacy when he became the king of Judah, right? He became king of Judah, right? Octavia made him the king of Judah, so under the Romans. So they married into the Hasmonean family, which are the Maccabees, to get some credibility. This is what Herod did, right? And then they had children with them. And I think he put his kids to death. Anyway, hence he destroyed the entire royal family of the Hasmonean, put to death many of the Jews that opposed his government, and proceeded to kill even his dearly beloved wife, Mariam, there you go, of the Hasmonean line, and his 2 sons she had borne him. By these acts of bloodshed, and especially by his love and imitation of Roman customs and institutions, and by the burdensome taxes imposed upon his subjects, burdensome taxes, because remember, Matthew, right, was a publican, which is a taxman. So Matthew was hated as well. They would have looked at Matthew, before Matthew became part of the 12, the Jews, the Israelites would have looked at Matthew as a Gentile. They would have hated him and looked at him as if he was a Gentile of another nation, because he worked for the Romans collecting taxes from the Jews. Remember, Matthew, just like how they looked on Cornelius as being a Gentile because he worked for the Romans, he was a Roman officer in the Roman army. Matthew, as you can see, Philip, Bartholomew, Thomas, and Matthew, the publican. Matthew was a tax collector. So he would have been just as hated, just as much as Cornelius would have been hated by the Jews, right? The Israelites who knew they were Israelites living in Judea. They would have hated anyone that had any association with the Romans or that was working for the Romans indirectly or directly. So Matthew was a tax collector working for the Romans indirectly. So he would have been hated before he became part of the 12. So he would have been looked upon by his fellow Israelites as being a Gentile. They would have hated him. They would have scorned him and his family. Trust me. So it says there, by the acts of bloodshed, and especially by his love and imitation of Roman customs and institutions, and by the burdensome taxes imposed upon the subjects, he so alienated the Jews that he was unable to regain their favor by his splendid restoration of the temple and other acts of munificence. So he died in the 70th year of his age, the 37th year of his reign, the 4th before Dionysian era. In his closing years, John the Baptist and Yahushua were born. So this is what I wanted to see. So he definitely was in charge then. So in his closing years, John the Baptist and Yahushua were born. So it definitely was Herod the Great. So Matthew narrates that he commanded all the male children, Herod the Great, under 2 years old, in Bethlehem to be slain, because they heard about the prophecy of the king of Jerusalem, the king of Israel, rising up and taking down the Roman Empire and so forth and so on, which was not meant to happen then. This is what's coming now. Yahushua is coming now to take down the last leg of, or the reincarnation of the Roman Empire today, which is Edom, Babylon the Great, America, and these Edomites, right? So as you can see, so that's who he was, right? So let's go back to, where was we? Here. So he's an officer in the Roman army. But he was a devout man, and one that feared Yahweh and all his house, which gave much alms to the people and prayed to Yahweh always. So he was a devout man. So he embraced his Israelite heritage, the Israelite customs, the laws, commandments, and statutes, so forth and so on. And he believed in Yahushua, Cornelius, to show you that he was an Israelite, because no Edomite would be considered a devout man. No Edomite would have been believing in Yahushua, would have been following the laws, commandments, and statutes. Remember, the Romans and the Greeks had their own gods, right? So these were their gods, right? Let me just quickly show you, because I kind of brought this up earlier as well. The Greek gods and their Roman counterparts. So the Roman gods were Greek gods. So the Romans took their gods from the Greeks and renamed them. So Aphrodite became Venus, right? The Greek god Aphrodite. Apollo, the Greek god, became Phoebus and also known as Apollo. Ares, the Greek god Ares, became the Roman god Mars. The Greek god Artemis became the Roman god Diana. Israelites worshiping Diana. The Greek god Athena became the Roman god Minerva. The Greek god Cronus became the Roman god Saturn. The Greek god Demeter became the Roman god Ceres. The Greek god Dionysus became the Roman god Bacchus. The Israelites were also worshipping, there were Israelites that were doing idolatry, were also worshipping Bacchus. The Greek god Eros became the Roman god Cupid. The Greek god Hades became the Roman god Pluto. The Greek god Hector became the Roman god Trivia. So you get the story, right? You go the way down to the Greek god Night became the Roman god Victoria. We have night today, right? Night trainers, right? As a Greek god became the Roman god Victoria. You know, all the way down to Poseidon became Neptune, and Zeus became Jupiter. So you get the understanding, right? The Romans took the Greek gods and renamed them and gave them basically Roman names, right? And started worshipping them. So if we go back up here, it says, although Greek gods are arguably better known, Greek and Roman mythology, because that's what they are. They're just mythology. They're not real gods. It's idolatry, but that's what they worship. It says Greek and Roman mythology often have the same gods with different names, because many Roman gods are borrowed from what? From Greek mythology, often with different traits. For example, Cupid is the Roman god of love, and Eros is the Greek god of love. Eris is the unpopular and feared Greek god of war, and his Roman counterpart is Mars, who is revered as a marital fertility god. That's all they did. They took their gods, renamed them, and worshipped them there, and it's all mythology. They're not real gods, but that's what they was into, right? The Greeks and the Romans. So we go back to Tiberius, who was an Israelite, as you can see, born into a wealthy Jewish family of Alexandria, all right? But abandoning or neglecting, here it says the Jewish religion. It would be the Israelite religion, because they didn't call themselves Jewish. They were the Israelites, all right? He rose to become the second procurator of Judea, right? Under Claudius, which must be Emperor Claudius, Tiberius Claudius Caesar, all right? That was the emperor that before Nero, I believe, all right? While also he was a prefect of Egypt. So he was also a prefect of Egypt, right? From 66 AD to 69 AD. So he was well into the Roman ways. He didn't want nothing to do with his Israelite heritage, Tiberius Julius Alexander. He employed his legions. So he was in charge of legions. So he was so much more higher up than Cornelius, who was just a centurion. Cornelius was in charge of 100 men, which is a centurion. He's in charge of legions. A legion is what? During the Roman Republic, the Manipular Legion region comprised of 4,200 infantry and 300 cavalry. After the Marian reforms in 107 BC, the legions were formed of 5,200 men. All right, so he was in charge of legions, over 5,200 men, plus the cavalry. So Cornelius would have come under this guy's leadership, if anything, because Cornelius is just an officer. This guy is a general. He's a prefect in Egypt. He's also a procurator and an equestrian governor as well. All right. It says here, and he says he employed his legions against the Alexandrians. He employed his legions against the Alexandrians. Who are the Alexandrians? The history of the Jews in Alexandria dates back to the founding of the city. By Alexander the Great in 332 BC. Jews in Alexandria, listen carefully, played a crucial role in the political, economic, cultural, and religious life of Hellenistic and Roman Alexandria, with Jews comprising about 35% of the city's population, right, during those times. So the Israelites in Alexandria made up 1/3 of the population. Hence, when we tell you about the Hellenistic times and the Hellenization of the Israelites during the times of the Maccabees and prior to that under the Ptolemies, under the Antiochus, right, from the Seleucid Empire, they were being Hellenized because all of these, the Ptolemies, right, that controlled Egypt, the Antiochus, the Seleucid Empire that controlled Syria, all of Alexander's generals, they took on the ways of the Greeks. They're not the original Greeks. They are Edomites. They conquered the Greeks, and then they took on their lifestyle, right? Just like what the Romans did. The Romans conquered the Etruscans, and then the Romans became the Romans. They, in a sense, became the Etruscans. They took on all of their cultures, their ways, their customs, and so forth, and then they were in control. Same thing with these Eastern Europeans that came from Macedonia, Philip the Great, his son Philip the Macedonian, and Alexander the Great. Alexander the Great is Philip the Macedonian's son. All right. So the Jews made up 1/3 of the population in Alexandria. Get this, 1/3 of the population. All right. So this is when it tells you about them being Hellenized. We tell you about them being Hellenized. Hence, those were the Gentiles. When it says there's no difference between Jew and Greek, it's because a lot of the Israelites that lived outside of Jerusalem and Judea, the majority of them became Hellenized or Romanized. All right. So when it says here, he says he employed these legions. This is Tiberius Julius Alexander against the Alexandrian Jews in a brutal response to ethnic violence, and was instrumental in Emperor Vespasian, which is the father of General Titus. Right, he was instrumental in Emperor Vespasian's rise to power. So he helped Vespasian come into power during the year of the four. They call it the 4 emperors, the year of the emperors, right? The 4 emperors. We had the 4 different emperors: Galba, I forget the other one's name. Galba. Yeah, the year of the 4 emperors, right? Galba, Otho. I think Otho's the other one. Year of 4 emperors. I think Otho's the other one. Year of the 4 emperors. Otho, Galba, Otho. That's it. Otho, Servilius, Marcus Servilius, Otho, Servilius, Sulpicius, Galba. So you had Galba, Otho, Vitellius, and then obviously Vespasian, Flavius Vespasian, who finally became the emperor. All right, and that was the new dynasty with his 2 sons, Domitian and Titus. So he became instrumental in the Emperor Vespasian's rise to power, right? In 70 AD, he participated, Tiberius Julius Alexander, the Israelite who neglected and abandoned his heritage, he participated in the siege of Jerusalem, which is what? 70 AD. That's what he did. He participated in the siege of Jerusalem, which was the decisive event of the first Jewish-Roman war in which the Roman army led by the future emperor, which was, it began with Vespasian and then Titus took over. Emperor Titus besieged Jerusalem, the center of Jewish rebel resistance in the Roman province of Judea, right? Following a 5-month siege, the Romans destroyed the city and the temple. So he became the most powerful Jew, Israelite of his age, and he's ranked as one of the most prominent Jews in military history. Tiberius Julius Alexander. This was not a devout Israelite, as you can see, but he was an Israelite who was as high as you probably got until we became the emperors from the times of Nerva going on within the Roman Empire, under the Edomite rulership of the Roman Empire. He rose to the highest position of power under the Edomite emperors. And Vespasian and the Flavian dynasty, they spawned from his 2 sons. They became emperors after his father died. So when we go back to Acts 10, this is an Israelite, Cornelius, just like Tiberius Julius Alexander, but this Israelite, he was a devout man, and one that feared Yahweh with all his house, which gave much alms to the people and prayed to Yahweh always. He saw in a vision, evidently about the 9th hour of the day, an angel of Yahweh coming into him and saying unto him, Cornelius. And when he looked on him, he was afraid and said, what is it, Lord? So could you imagine? He saw an angel come to him and say, what is it, Lord? All right. Into him in his house. And he says unto him, the angel says unto Cornelius, thy prayers and thine alms are come up for memorial before Yahweh. So his alms. So he was always doing good deeds within the Israelite community, providing them with money and other things that he was doing for the Israelites in his community, because he never turned his back on his people, even though he was an officer in the Roman army. Hence, it shows you again, this is not talking about an Edomite or someone of another nation. The only people who knew about giving alms, right, were the Israelites. Short of that, you were taxed by the Romans, and if you were conquered by the Romans or subjugated by them, you had to pay tributary to the Romans, give them X amount of money every year. Forcefully, you had no choice. Alms is what you give willingly, by choice. When you're subjugated by a nation and you got to pay tribute to them or tributary to them, you're forced to do that. Just so you understand. 1 second, family. Sorry about that. So you're forced to, where he was giving alms willingly. So he was always helping out his fellow Israelites. So the angel says to him, he says, and when he looked on him, he was afraid of the angel and said, what is it, Lord? And he says unto him, that thy prayers and thine alms are come up for a memorial before Yahweh. And now send me to Joppa and call for one Simon, right, So he says, and now send men to Joppa and call for one Simon, whose surname is Peter, the apostle Peter. He lodges with one Simon, a tanner. A tanner is someone that works on leather, on hide. When you get hide from the cow and you skin them and you turn it into leather, they call it that. That's what they call a tanner. Someone that works on animal skins, basically, right? Mainly from cows and that type of things. So it says, he lodges with one Simon, a tanner, whose house is by the seaside. He shall tell thee what thou oughtest to do. And when the angel which spake unto Cornelius was departed, he called 2 of his household servants and a devout soldier, which would have been an Israelite, just like Cornelius. So this devout soldier was an Israelite. How do we know that? He says, and when the angel which spake unto Cornelius was departed, he called 2 of his household servants and a devout soldier of them that waited on him continually. And when he had declared all things unto them, he sent them to Joppa. So he told them about his encounter with the angel, what the angel said to him, and then he sent them to Joppa. Now, if they weren't Israelites and they didn't believe in Yahweh Bashim Yahushai, they would have said he's off his head. They would have never, the soldier would have still have to do what he was told because he's under the rule, he's under the leadership of Cornelius, but he would have thought he would have thought that the officer, Cornelius, would lost his mind. Even though that soldier would have had no choice but to, when the officer, Cornelius, gives him an order, he would still have to follow it. But he's called a devout soldier, one that is an Israelite, that believes in Yahweh Bashim Yahushai, and he's asked him to go with 2 of his servants, who are probably Israelites as well, to go to Peter. These are not Gentiles. He's calling people who he knows are Israelites and who are devout and believe in Yahweh Bashim Yahushai to go and take this mission, to go to Joppa. This is what Cornelius is doing. So it says, on the morrow, as they went on their journey, and drew near unto the city, Peter went up upon the housetop to pray upon the 6th hour. And when he became hungry and would have eaten, but while they made ready, he fell into a trance. So this is the apostle Peter. So now he's going to have a vision, right? And he saw heaven open and a certain vessel descending unto him, as it had been a great sheet knit at the 4 corners and let down to the earth, wherein were all manner of 4-footed beasts of the earth, and wild beasts, and creeping things, and fowls of the air. And there came a voice to him, which is Yahushai, saying, Rise, Peter, kill and eat. But Peter said, Not so, Lord, for I have never eaten anything that is common or unclean, right? Because Peter would never eat something that's unclean, right? Never. He says, and the voice spake unto him again the 2nd time, What Yahweh has cleansed, that call thou not common. So Peter didn't, at this point, Peter didn't understand what the Lord Yahushua was trying to show him, right? By using these unclean animals, right? These 4-footed beasts, right? This is all parabolic. So Peter didn't understand what he was being shown when Yahushua was showing all of these unclean animals. So he says here, this was done thrice, and the vessels were received up again into heaven. Now, while Peter doubted in himself what this vision which he had seen should mean, didn't understand what it had meant yet, until those men from Joppa, Cornelius' 2 servants, and the soldier, the devout soldier, came to Peter's house. So it says, now while Peter doubted in himself what this vision which he had seen should mean, behold, the men which were sent from Cornelius had made inquiry for Simon's house, and stood before the gate, and called and asked whether Simon, which was surnamed Peter, were lodged there. So while Peter thought on the vision, the Spirit said unto him, Behold, 3 men seek thee. So the Spirit jumps on Peter and says, Look, behold, 3 men are looking for you, right? And says, Arise therefore and get thee down from the roof and go with them, doubting nothing. Don't doubt anything that these 3 men are going to say to you, for I have sent them. All right. So the Spirit jumped on him, right? To tell him, say, look, get down from the roof, right? And get down from the roof and go with them. Go with these 3 men, the 2 servants and the Roman soldier. Don't doubt anything that they're going to tell you, because they're going to come and tell him about Cornelius's vision of the angel coming to Cornelius and telling him to go and send for Peter. So they're coming to tell Peter about the vision and that their master has sent them to bring him to him, right? So the Spirit jumps on Peter to make him know, don't refuse these men, for I have sent them. Then Peter went down to the men which were sent unto him from Cornelius and said, Behold, I am he whom you seek. What is the cause wherefore you are come? And they said, Cornelius the Centurion, the Roman officer, a just man, which is an Israelite, and one that fears Yahweh, an Israelite, of good report amongst all the nations of the Jews, an Israelite, was warned from Yahweh by an holy angel to send for thee into his house and to hear the words of thee. Then called he them in and lodged them. And on the morrow in the morning, Peter went away with them, and certain brethren from Joppa accompanied him. All right, so Peter now makes his way down to Joppa with the two servants and the Roman soldier after they told him, after the soldiers and the servants told him about their master's vision, Cornelius's vision, and that the angel came to him and said, look, go get this man, bring him to his house because he's got things to tell you. Says, and on the morrow and in the morning, after they entered into Caesarea, and Cornelius waited for them and had called together his kinsmen and near friends, and as Peter was coming in, Cornelius met him and fell down at his feet and worshipped him, right? But Peter took him up, saying, stand up, I myself also am a man, right? And as he talked with him, he went in and found many that were come together. So there was many in Cornelius's house. They would have all been Israelites, the servants, whatever soldiers was in there, whatever other people, they would have all been Israelites waiting for Peter to come. And he says unto them, you know how that it is an unlawful thing. This is what Peter says unto them. And he says unto them, you know that it's an unlawful thing for a man that is a Jew, an Israelite, who's not part of the Roman army, like Tiberius Julius Alexander, or like Cornelius. He's not a tax collector like Matthew, because Matthew was scorned before he became part of the 12. Tax collectors, which are publicans, they were scorned by the Israelites. They were hated. They were looked upon as being Romans, people of another nation. They were scorned by their own people. So Matthew was looked upon the same way like Cornelius was until Matthew joined the 12 and became part of the 12 disciples, right? And this is why he said that. And he says unto them, you know how that it is an unlawful thing for a man that is a Jew to keep company or come unto one of another nation. They would have looked on him as being someone of another nation. But Yahweh has showed me, and this is why now he understands what the vision was that he saw of the clean and unclean foods. He says, but Yahweh has showed me that I should not call any man common or unclean. Makes you understand that the vision that Peter had back up here has got nothing to do with food. The foods were used. It was they were as a parable. They were like parabolic. They were the symbols to make Peter understand that there are going to be Israelites living amongst the other nations, dressed like the other nations, the ones that Apostle Paul goes to, the Gentiles, that are Israelites, that are actually Israelites that need to come into the fold. This is why it says up here in 15, it says, and the voice spake unto him again the second time, what Yahweh has cleansed, that call that thou not common, right? Because when Peter said, not so, Lord, for I have never eaten anything that is common or unclean, it wasn't actually referring to food. The Lord was using food in the vision, but it was a symbolic, should I use the right word, symbolic for him coming to Cornelius, because Cornelius would have been looked upon as another nation because he was a Roman officer in the Roman army. So his own people would have hated him for signing up to be part of that, right? To being part of the Roman Empire. But he was always faithful to his people, Cornelius, and he was a devout man, meaning that he would have kept the high holy days and kept the Sabbath to the best of his ability, because he's under orders by higher ups as well, and he would have been totally fair with his fellow Israelites. And like he said, he was helping them out. He was giving arms to the Israelites, to the Israelite community. He was always providing them with arms, which is money, support. So we go back to verse 28, and he says unto them, you know how that it is an unlawful thing for a man that is a Jew to keep company and come unto another nation, but Yahweh has showed me that I should not call any man common or unclean. Therefore came I unto you without gainsaying, without any judgment, because now I know that although you're part of the Roman Empire and you're a Roman officer, you're an Israelite, who's a devout Israelite, who keeps the high holy days, who believes in Yahushua. So you need to hear the word. You have a right to hear the word, to be part of this thing. It says, therefore came I unto you without gainsaying. As soon as I was sent for, I asked therefore for what intent you have sent for me. And Cornelius said, 4 days ago I was fasting until this hour, and at the 9th hour I prayed in my house, and behold, a man stood before me in bright clothing, which was the angel, and said, Cornelius, thy prayer is heard, and thine alms, all the good things that he's always been doing for the community, are in remembrance in the sight of Yahweh. Send therefore to Joppa and call hither Simon, whose surname is Peter. He is lodged in the house of one Simon a tanner by the seaside, who, when he cometh, shall speak unto thee. What's he going to speak unto him? The things that Yahushua has taught Peter. Immediately, therefore, I sent to thee, and thou hast well done that thou art come. Now, therefore, are we all here present before Yahweh to hear all things that are commanded thee of Yahweh Bashim, Yahushua. So I don't need to go into any more for you to understand that Cornelius was a devout Israelite who sent for Peter, who was visited by an angel. Peter had the dream of the clean and unclean foods, which was symbolic for Israelites that were looked upon as Gentiles by the actual Jews. It had nothing to do with food. It was a symbolic vision that he had to show you that because he's part of the Roman army, he will be considered part of another nation, but he's an Israelite, and he's a devout Israelite that believed in Yahushua and Yahweh. Whereas Tiberius Julius Alexander, he was born into a wealthy Israelite family in Alexandria, but abandoning or neglecting the Jewish religion, and he rose up to be what? Procreating the Jewish thing. So he rejected his heritage and abandoned it. But he was an Israelite, but a wicked Israelite. Whereas Cornelius was a righteous Israelite who was part of the Roman army, part of the Roman Empire, and an officer, but he never rejected his heritage, the high holy days, his religion, and his family and his people. That's the difference, but they are both Israelites. One was a devout man, the other one was not. Simple as. All right? So, on that note, I'm going to shut it down. As you can see again.
Maximian, we are your soldiers, but we are even more the soldiers of Christ.
They are the soldiers of Yahushua, and that's what they saw themselves as, the soldiers of Yahushua. So I pray you are edified. I'll give all the praises and the glory to Yahweh, Ba'asham, Yahushua, Mahasham, Rakah, Kodash, double honors to the apostles and to the elders of Great Millstone. As I always like to say, keep praying, keep safe, repent, and hold on to this truth. All right, leave your comments in the comments board if you've got any questions regarding today's edification. What more can I say, boy? I just truly hope you understand. Cornelius was an Israelite, but a righteous Israelite. Whereas Tiberius Julius Alexander was an Israelite, but he was not a devout man. He hated his beliefs, his religion, and his people and his heritage. Shalom, shalom, shalom.